Hello, this is Professor Shapiro, known on the internet as Harry Hawk, and we are here inside of Canvas, and I'm loading the homepage, right? And if everybody could do that, if you're following along, you're going to need to. We're going to focus on two things today. We have two discussion boards this week, and we're going to talk about both of them. One is about the marketing plan, which relates also to the final project for this course. The other one is about segmentation. And if you go into modules and come down to week 3, you'll see that. So we have one discussion on market segmentation and another case on your marketing plan. And that relates, of course, to the final project. To get all of the details, we're going to go through all of this. We're going to start with market segmentation. And if you're following along, you can click on that. In here, there is a link to a Google Doc and a PowerPoint. And the Google Doc, if we click on it, will open up and load. It's view only. And you're going to go to File and make a copy. When you hit make a copy, you can give it your name. And you can now edit this document. And while I'm giving the lecture today, the goal is for you to fill in these blanks from the lecture, so you will have this as part of your notes on market segmentation. Now, the other key link here is to the PowerPoint. If you click on that and open it up, you will get this PowerPoint. I've opened it up here inside of Google. And so I'm going to run through this lecture tonight. And while I'm going through this again, you will try to fill out all of these fields from the lecture. After that's done, we're going to come back and we're going to go back to the modules and we're going to work on your final project and the related case. So without further ado, I'm going to start the lecture. So again, you should have your Google Doc open. You can open it on a phone, a tablet, a desktop, laptop. And again, the idea is to fill this in as we go along. So the first one here is a way of analyzing a market by specific characteristics in order to blank the target market. And we can see here on this slide, we have the same language, ways of analyzing a market by specific characteristics in order to define the target market. So when I get to this part of the lecture, you can see I'm on slide 4. When I get to slide 4, then you would come in here and you would put in define here. And I've been putting them in a different color, so I know as I'm looking back what were the words that I was able to define. Now, you don't have to turn this into me. This is your notes for you. I definitely love your feedback, but without further ado, we'll go back to slide 1 and start the lecture. So we're talking about market segmentation, and it's very simple. We live on a planet of over 7 billion people, each one with different tastes, different languages, different skill sets, different families, different religions, different tastes in food, all sorts of differences. And we all have different incomes and from different places. And so if you wanted to sell like a luxury item, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, you can imagine that must be hard to do. Because if we went to each person on the planet, almost no one that we would bump into on the entire planet could afford either of those cars. In order to figure out how to sell a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, we'd need to segment the market into a smaller group, the group that could first afford it. And then we'd need to do some other segmentation, including finding a group that might want to buy it, who enjoy cars. And the same is true for your events, right? This is all leading up to you creating your business marketing plan. And you need to be thinking about all of this, how you can find the audience for your event. If your event costs $500 to attend, not quite as expensive as a Ferrari, but still, that's kind of expensive. If your event is free, well, that's another consideration. People may not value attending if it's for free. And everywhere in between free and whatever price you charge, and there's many corporate events that are in the $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 category plus travel. So there's easily events that are in the $3,000 to $10,000 range, and there's plenty of local events that are $5, $20, $40, and so forth. We need to consider, how do we find our audience? And that's what market planning, and particularly market segmentation, is all about. Mass marketing, as we've learned in the vocabulary, appeals to all people. And sometimes, as we just talked about, if we're trying to sell a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or even a pastrami sandwich, not everybody wants one of those things. Sometimes we want to target everybody. If we're selling soap or toilet paper, there's probably no one who shouldn't be a customer. But if we're trying to target a particular product, we need to find a narrower group of people. So instead of mass marketing, we need to do segmented marketing. And now this is just a thought experiment for you. So you can do this, you can pause the video, but make a list of the purchases you make and link it to how you identify yourself socially or your personality. For example, the example that the person who wrote these slides says is, I buy Vans shoes. So for me, I drive a car, which doesn't sound unusual, but I live in New Jersey and New York, and a lot of people in New York don't have cars. A lot of people in New York City don't even know how to drive. I like to cook. Not everybody likes to cook. I am an award-winning chef of sorts. So I've won an award for hamburgers. So we start to think about purchases that you've made and things that you enjoy, and just think about how you identify yourself. And that's part of the discussion board that's going on today. But when we think of all those characteristics, where you live, where you work, what you like, what you love, what you hate, what you enjoy, those are all characteristics that we can use to define a target. We can find other people like you. If you drive a Prius or a Hellcat, or if you ride a bicycle, or if you jog, if you wear a wool hat, or you wear a baseball cap, or if you play golf or baseball, or you like a particular kind of music, all of these things are individual characteristics that we can use to define a target market. And so market segmentation is about finding a group of people that demand similar products and services. Now you think of events is literally a market segment. People who go to Comic-Con in San Diego, and there's a lot of them, but they love comic books and sci-fi and all of those things. People who go to Coachella like a particular kind of music. If we went to a music event in the United Kingdom, like Glastonbury, it might be a different audience. If we went to Electric Zoo in New York, an EDM event, we'd find a different audience. So our segment is a group of people that demand similar products or services. And this, at the very core, is why event marketing is so powerful. We're creating this magnet. Our events are a magnet that will attract a whole bunch of people with the same interests. That is the core objective of an event, is to attract one or more segments. Yes, we might have several segments. You can think of a VIP and a regular segment, or you can think of, at a music festival, they'll have different tents, perhaps with different bands or groups or DJs. So it's not necessarily what we would say is monolithic. It's not necessarily just one segment, but it could be several smaller related segments. So a true market segment needs to meet some specific criteria, which we have here, distinct from other segments. So there has to be a way of differentiating it, homogeneous within the segment. We have heterogeneous and homogeneous. This is not referring to sexual identity, right? Homogeneous means that have similar characteristics. So in the case, again, of Comic Book Con, or Comic-Con, I should say, we have everybody who loves comic books or everybody who loves sci-fi. Another convention might be a classic car show at Pebble Beach, or a race, a NASCAR race, or a road race, people running, or we could all go to where apples grow, and we could all go apple picking. That could be another distinct characteristic. So segments are homogeneous. Now, that means ultimately that the people exhibit several of the same common traits. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all men or all women. We could look for a segment of golfers who are retired. We'd have retired men, retired women, would be different ages. Some people retire when they're 45, other people when they're 75. And we could have a 90-year-old who's still working and likes golf, but they wouldn't be part of that segment because they're not retired. We're looking for golfers who are retired. So again, homogeneous, the segment has the similar or common needs or characteristics, and they will respond similarly to the market stimulus. And what does that mean? They're going to react similarly to pricing changes, value, messaging. So when a new car ad comes on, and if it's for a minivan, if you get excited about minivans, well, that's responding to market stimulus. If you see a minivan ad come on television, you turn the channel, then, you're also responding to the stimulus, but you're not part of that cohort. So one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, are our groups true market segments? And the answer to that ultimately becomes, if they can be reached by market intervention, that they are. So market segmentations, businesses look for ways to connect with current, that's on your list, so make sure you find that on that Google Doc, current, that's one of the answers, and potential customers. And again, I said this earlier, this is exactly why events are so powerful as a marketing tool. A brand that wants to reach people has to do something to reach them. Just putting ads up is okay, but if you can get a bunch of people to travel and come to your event and spend money to come inside, well, that's a really good indication that they really love that. Think of everybody who likes comic books, but how many of them actually make it to Comic-Con? All the way to San Diego. And I'm not just talking about people who live, in San Diego nearby, but just everybody. There's a lot of people. Not everybody makes it there. Not everybody necessarily can get a ticket, that kind of thing. But still, the ones who get there, those are the, if you will, true believers. But we need to know about people, and there's many different criterion that we could have to go into our market segment, where they live, their income, their age, ethnic background, activities, their personal, religious, or other kinds of values, and their interests. Market segmentation, again, marketers analyze groups of consumers to break them down into smaller, more precise clusters. For example, look at all these different genes. Who's buying, at what price, and what special features that we want. So we could have somebody who's looking for an easy fit, low-cost gene for women, and someone else who might be looking for a high fashion, a very tight fit, high cost, super high quality denim, also for women. Could be for the same age women, but they're, the one with the tight fit might have a bigger interest in fashion or athletics, different food interests. And so we want to create as many segments as we need, again, so we can think of all the different people who come to Comic-Con, all the different people who go to Coachella, any event, whether it's a baseball game or an open house for a real estate sale. Again, within our audience is going to be one or more segments. And now here's, what is a segment? If you think, as you see with the pasta here, we have each of those little compartments inside of the pasta. Each one of those is a segment. Or if you think of an orange or a grapefruit, when you peel it, you have all of the different segments. And when we're talking about marketing segmentation, there are generally 4 categories of which we can use to define the people. In earlier lectures, we talked about different ways of segmenting media, right? We segmented media into the peso model, paid, earned, shared, and owned. This is a segmentation for people, right? And we can even use things like, when we say behavioral here, as one of the characteristics, then if we know what kind of magazine or newspaper, if they watch YouTube or they watch Twitch, they watch video on Facebook or on over the air on the television or through cable on the television, all of those different behaviors of how they react to media or food, that's all part of segmentation. And again, so we have demographics, which is all about age and income and other characteristics like ethnic or racial characteristics. Geographics, psychographics is a little bit more complex, but it's very close to behavioral, but it's really divided more into how you think and feel, and behavioral is how you act. So again, we can define a population by any of these different segments. For a demographic segment would include age, gender, income, marital status, ethnic background, and family size. And we have certain age ranges that we commonly talk about. So baby boomers were born between 46 and 64, although I was born somewhere at the tail end of that, and when I was born, I was not a baby boomer. These characteristics, these generations X, Y, and Z. At one point, I was Generation X, and then I was that thing in between, and so these things do actually move around. In fact, you see Generation X, early 60s. So that does include that overlap with baby boomers, and that's where I fit in. But what we have to understand is these are created by marketers and other folks. These are not scientific distinctions, nor are these governmental. There's no government law that says you're a baby boomer or you're Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and so forth. Gender is something that we all may have, but as we've talked about and discussed, this is something that we need to be sensitive to individuals, how they perceive their own gender. When we talk about income, there's the amount of money that you have that's disposable, meaning it's sort of extra income after the basic needs are met. So your discretionary income is the money that pays for your rent and for your heating and for your basic transportation. But if you were going to rent a private jet on the weekend, that's disposable income, right? Or buy tickets to an event, or buy all of your friends a milkshake or a cheeseburger. Income, as we've just talked about, we have disposable income. That's, that's the money left after paying for your basic needs. I disagree with that disposable only is money after tax, but I guess that is a more classic definition. Marketers who produce and distribute products that are necessities are interested in changes in disposable income, right? When we have a recession in 2008, people's disposable income changed. And then the marketers who sell luxury and premium goods, want to make sure that they're finding the right people. Then we're looking at ethnic and other trends and mixed families. Someone like President Barack Obama, visually you might classify him into a particular racial group, but we know that people have very mixed backgrounds, and you can't necessarily put somebody into a particular category, which again is why we need to follow that platinum rule. But still, these are classifications that marketers can consider. Then we have that geographic section of segmentation. So if we're targeting particular events, most of you will have a geographic segmentation. It's unlikely that you would be creating an event in and around San Diego that would appeal to people in New York. And maybe it would, and people will buy a ticket and get on a plane, rent a hotel room, and then come to your event. But it's more likely you're going to be targeting local people. And you can also think about, as you target them, how far away should you? How far will people travel? Will someone come from Tijuana? Will they come over the border? Will someone come from La Jolla? Will someone come further up the California coast? Will someone come from, some place a little bit further north, like St. Louis Obispo? You never know. So you have to consider all of these things. There's a good map. And now psychographics. Again, this is perhaps the hardest one of these segments to understand, but grouping people together with similar lifestyles, attitudes, values, hobbies, opinions. These are all things that we can link together. Someone who reads a particular magazine often has a particular psychographic approach. If you read Field and Stream, you might be an outdoors person. If you read Cosmo or Vogue, if you read Road and Track, if you read the Wall Street Journal, or if you read the LA Times or the Washington Post. All of these different things tend to be a group of people who have similar interests. So magazines, also cable channels today, right? Those are sort of the new magazine. If you watch the Sci-Fi Channel, then that says something about your psychographic makeup, as would be if you watch the Comedy Channel or you watch a specific sports channel. So again, psychographics can include extracurricular activities, and you should think about for yourself, what are your hobbies, your interests, and think about, if you're going to be marketing your event, what kind of activities and hobbies align with your event. Sometimes it's very easy to understand if you're doing a car show, what sort of hobbies might relate to cars. But if you're doing a show for new mothers, it may not be clear. There may be more than one psychographic. Again, the whole thing about magazines, what kind of magazine or cable channel would you watch? That gets to your psychographic makeup. Or other particular characteristics, like what music you like, or if you like to dance. Sure, many people like to dance, but there's some people who like to dance very specific dances like the tango. Other people like very classic ballet or modern jazz dancing, or other people just like ballroom dancing, or some people just like to go to the local club, listen to the DJ, and move around the floor rhythmically, but they're not necessarily following some precisely well-defined dance. So again, all kinds of different psychographic segments that we can target. And finally, behavioral, how people use a product. So, do you wear a particular kind of shoe? Do you buy something based on the cost or the value? In other words, some people spend a lot of money on shoes. Some people try to spend as little as possible. Some people have 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. Other people may have 100 or more. Same as your approach to cars or trucks. What kind of camera do you buy? Well, if you have a cell phone, do you need a camera? Probably not, but many people still buy cameras. What are your shopping patterns? Do you only shop sales, or do you shop at other times? Do you pay attention to the pricing? In the supermarket, when you shop, there are pricing called unit pricing, which tells you how the item is priced by the pound or the ounce. So, if you see a package of steaks, the cost might be $25, but the unit pricing will tell you that it's $15 a pound. If you're buying a box of cereal, the unit pricing will tell you by the ounce how much you're paying. So if you have packages, different sizes, it's not always clear which one offers the better value. Are you somebody who shops the unit pricing, or are you not even aware that unit pricing exists? And then usage rates, this 80-20, also known as the Pareto effect. The 80-20 rule simply says that perhaps 80% of the volume or 80% of the sales, 80% of the income may come from 20% of the people. Those are our most loyal customers, perhaps. And that is also then brand loyalty. And for example, MasterCard, it says here, looks for 5 different distinct groups of online customers: confident users, cautious shoppers, mainstream, curious but not convinced, and technology skeptics. These are different people who have different levels of interest in online shopping. And the overriding finding was that enhanced security influenced purchasing decisions. So they were trying to figure out which customers would value enhanced security on their credit card. Again, behavioral, the Pareto effect, or the 80-20 rule, 80% of the customer sales are generated by 20% of its most loyal customers. That's not always true, but it's often some similar ratio. And so then again, how do marketers use this information? We look at our current customers. If we don't have customers, we have to imagine who they might be. We come up with personas or archetypes. But sometimes, larger companies get into very serious research. Let's assume this is true. Most teens spend less than $50 a month on entertainment. If we're trying to sell entertainment for teens and we know they have such a limited budget, how does that affect our event marketing? Do we need to market it well in advance so that they save up their money for our event? Do we need to take a deposit and make some kind of transaction where they can pay a couple dollars every couple weeks? If we're selling to people who had more income that they could spend on entertainment, well, maybe we wouldn't need to worry so much about it. But then it says here that teen girls spend more money on music than boys, and so forth. So there's all kinds of ways to classify people based on geography, behavior, geographic, and psychographic. So what image does Wendy's use to promote their hamburgers? If Wendy's lowered their price, they might sell more, but their profit would drop. If they raised their price, they would lose customers to competitors who offered similar products. So again, how people react to pricing changes, that's a big part of segmentation. And that's why all of you who are considering events need to consider the ticket price. And again, you say, well, I'll make it free. Well, then who's going to pay for the event? And you can make the event absolutely fabulous, so to speak. But if the ticket then needs to be $200 or $300, can you find enough people who would want to pay that amount to come to your event? Again, if there's no ticket price, people don't really buy in, right? People may sign up and then not show up. If the day isn't perfect, if something went wrong, if people are just busy, I signed up for that event, but it didn't cost me anything. But if you bought tickets to Coachella, it's really unlikely that you're not going to show up. Assuming you're healthy, you're going to get there, and if your car breaks down, you'd probably find a way to still get there. But that free event, someone is running into trouble, they might just even have forgotten that they had signed up altogether. So there are lots of considerations here. Again, how do we identify your target market? What are you selling? What makes it unique? Who do you want to sell it to? Why should people buy it from you? And we need to ask these questions in the focus of an event. And again, I've been talking a lot about events here, particularly track 1 and 3. If you're a track 2 person, you need to focus this on yourself. What makes you a unique? Who out there in the business world would need your skills, and how can you market yourself to them? So we're not going to do this particular group assignment. That is the end of this. And so again, if you go through here, you will see that you should have filled all of this out. And I hope you were able to do that. If you have some questions, certainly get back to me. And so now we're back here in Canvas. And again, we can start on the home page just so you're oriented. And I want everybody to go to the modules and then to start your final project. And I just want to remind everybody again that you do, in fact, need to start this final project. We really have, we're in the 3rd week. It's an 8-week course. So that's going to give you essentially 5 weeks to work on this. In reality, if this was a 15-week course, we do have about 10 weeks of the course left. But we've eaten up already at this point on Wednesday of week 3. We're technically 5 weeks into the course. So you need to really hunker down and get to work on this. And there's a lot in the week 1 lecture. If you watched it or didn't watch it, in either case, you should check it out this week, either for the first time or again. I go through the template, this template, in great depth, and I explain what parts you need to fill out and so forth. And I'm not going to repeat that today. So it's real important, if that's not fresh in your mind, pause this, go ahead and check out week 1 lecture. So we're going to open up this template just like we did for the fill in the blank market segmentation. You need to go to File, make a copy. Again, put your name, EVNT 155, final marketing plan. Again, you're allowed to either do a marketing plan or a business plan. You'll say, okay, this is now saved into your Google account. And I do want to remind you that the first page here and the second page are just notes about the process. This is the actual first page of what you need to fill out. This is the title page. And then what follows is a table of contents. And later we will put page numbers on this. It's not until you get to page 6 that this is what you should be editing. So you'll leave in the word executive summary, but you'll answer all of these questions. Now, this is where I'm not going to go any further. And I walk through every step of this during the week 1 lecture, because that's how important this is. I really want to be thinking about this from the beginning. But we can look at this table of contents, background, history, event, overview, SWOT analysis, event requirements, and so forth. And so when we click on modules again and go to the discussion board, this one here, steps in your marketing plan, we can see here, oh, there's a figure that is not showing up. So I'm going to have to fix that, so I apologize. Let me see if I can get that to load in. All right, so I will save this image out. And I'll make sure later I'll make this permanent so that everybody can see it. But here are the 8 steps that we need to work on: corporate mission, analysis, forecasting, setting marketing goals and objectives, marketing strategy, segmentation, targeting, and positioning, which you should now be very familiar with, tactics and action, resource requirements, marketing, control, and communications plan. So here are my step-by-step instructions of what to do for each of these. That 8th one is not required this week. But I want you to, for your event or for yourself, if you're track 2, to go ahead and answer these. These are preliminary. These are just the basic things. In your event template, you're going to have to go into a lot more detail. So this is just to get you warmed up. And again, I want to talk through these. Your mission statement. What is your vision for the event? Who's going to attend? Why are they going to want to attend? For 2, analysis. I want you to do a SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat. I'm not going to go through SWOT in any great detail. That should have been well covered in earlier courses that you've taken. If for some reason it's something that's new to you, please 100% get in touch with me and I'll find a good YouTube video for you. But I want to do a SWOT analysis for your event and a competitive analysis also in form of a SWOT analysis. So essentially the first one is for your event and the second one is for all other similar events. So I want you to think, very widely here. For our purposes, for this assignment, you can pick just one key competitor. Now for step 3, forecasting, we're talking about sales. How many people are going to show up? It's not all 7 billion people on the planet. So I really want to know how many people you expect and what price, if any, you expect to charge. 4 is you're setting your goals and objectives. Beyond attendance and the ticket price, which is covered in step 3, what other measurable sales goals do you have? Do you need to sell so many tickets in advance? Do you need to sell sponsorships or other corporate endorsements or income? Do you anticipate being able to give sales leads to your sponsoring company? How many sales leads do you expect to generate? Those are measurable sales goals. What is your ideal target segment? So again, we've talked all about segmentation tonight. What is yours? And you can give more than one of them, but at least for this assignment, I want to know your perfect ideal segment. Now, for step 3, I just want you to link to your case study for online marketing. So you'll come in here, you'll find this, and you'll find your own answer here, but you can just put this link in. It's going to be the same link for everybody, but I want to make sure that you see the reason I'm asking for this is that you learn that you can actually take these links and you can bookmark them, save them, or use them just like any other web link. All right, so that's step 6 is already done. And then all you have to do is put in the link. Now, if you did not complete the week 2 online marketing and case study, you'll need to complete that for this assignment. Step 7, the square footage of the space and the expected rental cost. And any other resources you want to include, those are optional, but I want to know how much space you need and what you reasonably actually expect. If you're going to be doing this for real, you should definitely get on the phone and figure out what a venue is actually going to cost. All right. And so this is almost the end of the lecture here. I just want to come back to modules and then go back and talk about this discussion board on market segmentation. So we've already talked about these in the lecture, and now I want you to answer essentially how you would put yourself, if you were describing yourself from a demographic, geographic, psychographic, and a behavioral elements. Who are you? This is a very complex subject, and so I go into a lot of issues here relating to gender and gender identity. Not everybody wants to fit into a box, so you're put down here certainly what you're comfortable saying about yourself, but it's just important. If you can't understand who you are from a marketing perspective, it's going to be hard to find other people. In fact, you may want to find people who have some similar characteristics as yourself. So that is the other part of this discussion guide. You can just hit reply and put your own answer in here. So again, I'm going to come back to the home page. This is Professor Shapiro, known on the internet as Harry Hawk, and we are working on week 3, and you can access the week 3 modules here. You will need to start working on your final project. To help you do that, I'm asking you to answer some of the questions that you're going to need to answer in the larger template, but make sure that you have gotten a hold of the template, that you've made a copy, and you put your name and all that in there. Eventually, you're going to have to share that with me, and I will cover that next week. But for now, you can start to work on this. Again, all the work is required to be done in Google Docs so that we all have, so that I have access to the work that you're doing. And again, we have 2 discussion boards this week, a regular discussion board and then the case study. That is really it. I hope that if you have questions, that you take the time to text me or email me. If some of this doesn't make sense, you can make a private virtual office appointment with me, and I'll be happy to go through any of this step by step with you. I hope everybody has a great week. This is Professor Shapiro, and I will see you online